All right, let's dive straight into this explainer on one of the most documented, heavily debated UFO encounters in modern military history. We're looking at a case today that isn't just based on, a blurry photograph or a lone witness out in a remote field. No, we are talking about a massive incident involving the Imperial Iranian Air Force, civilian airspace, and a literal paper trail that went all the way up to the US White House, the CIA, and the NSA. This is the 1976 Tehran incident. Picture this. You're an elite fighter pilot attempting to fire a heat-seeking missile at a fast-approaching, completely unknown target. And suddenly, your entire weapons control panel just goes totally dark. It's the absolute ultimate nightmare for a pilot, a total, catastrophic loss of control at the exact second you need your technology the most. Now, this isn't a scene from some sci-fi movie. This is exactly what was reported by military personnel in the skies over Iran. Let's break down how this extraordinary night actually unfolded. Midnight over Tehran, the rewind. To really grasp how we arrive at that terrifying moment in the cockpit, we've got to turn the clocks back a bit to the late hours of September 18th, 1976.
The timeline here escalates incredibly fast. It kicks off around 12:30 a.m. with multiple panicked civilian phone calls from the Shamiran area of Tehran straight to the military command post. People are reporting this brilliant, strange object in the sky. Some are saying it looks like a bird, others are describing a helicopter with a blinding light, but the tower confirms there are absolutely no helicopters airborne. So, the night duty officer, General Nader Yousefi, goes out to look for himself, sees this intensely bright anomaly, and officially scrambles the first F-4 Phantom jet at 1:30 a.m. Just 10 minutes later, a second F-4 is launched.
Okay, I want you to lock this number into your head, 25. Specifically 25 nautical miles, because this specific threshold becomes the defining characteristic of the entire engagement.
What is truly fascinating here is how both of these jets experienced catastrophic electronic failures precisely as they closed to within 25 nautical miles of the object. They completely lost functionality until they backed away. It's wild. Lieutenant Nazeri in the first jet hits that exact 25-mile mark and loses all his instrumentation and UHF communications. He breaks off the intercept to retreat, and almost magically, the systems just pop back to life. Then, Major Parviz Jafari goes up in the second F-4. He actually manages to get a radar lock, but the second he pushes into that same 25-mile zone, he suffers the exact same localized systems failure. It's this incredibly synchronized pattern of electronic interference.
The anatomy of an encounter. Now, let's look at how this builds during Major Jafari's intercept, because this takes the mystery to an entirely new level.
So his radar paints this massive target. We're talking comparable in size to a Boeing 707 tanker. And it's flashing blue, green, red, and orange strobes so rapidly, they all just sort of blend together. Then, the impossible happens. A secondary, much smaller object actually detaches from the primary craft and charges directly at Jafari's F-4 at an immense speed. Believing he's under attack, Jafari tries to fire an AIM-mine Sidewinder missile, but his weapons control panel instantly dies. Totally defenseless, he is forced to plunge into a steep, evasive negative G dive. The secondary object tails him for a brief second, then breaks off and flawlessly redocks with the massive primary UFO. And wouldn't you know it, once Jafari is no longer a threat, his jet's systems power right back on.
But wait, the sequence gets even stranger. First, a third object is seen dropping from the main craft straight down to the Earth, gently landing in a dry lake bed and illuminating a massive 2-kilometer area. Then, as Jafari's F-4 is coming back to Mehrabad Airport, he experiences severe magnetic interference. Even a civilian airliner in the exact same area reports a sudden radio failure. Finally, day breaks. Helicopters go out to search the illuminated landing zone, fully expecting to find a spacecraft, or at least a crater. And what do they find? A beeper signal, which turns out to be a totally ordinary, coincidentally placed C-130 aircraft homing beacon. Just like that, the physical evidence completely fizzles out.
The official paper trail. Now, what elevates this explainer from, just some spooky pilot legend to a verified historical event is the declassified U.S. intelligence paper trail. If this were just a campfire story, we could easily dismiss it. But thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, we literally have the actual Defense Intelligence Agency teletype messages that were circulated globally to top military commands. Just look at that quote directly from the DIA evaluation form. They did not brush this off. They explicitly called it an outstanding report and a classic. They were treating this as an incredibly significant intelligence data point, definitely not just some routine misidentification. And the DIA justified this high rating because the incident checked all their rigorous boxes. You had multiple witnesses looking from both the ground and the air. You had highly credible military observers. We're talking generals, elite fighter pilots, tower supervisors. You had intense visual sightings backed up by hard, undeniable radar data. Plus, you had electromagnetic interference hitting 3 separate aircraft at once. And finally, the object displayed extreme, inordinate maneuverability that simply outclassed the advanced military jets trying to pursue it.
Explaining the unexplained. As an impartial explainer, we definitely need to examine the highly plausible skeptical counterarguments that try to bring these extraordinary claims back down to earth.
Skeptics, like Philip Klass, point out that the initial bright object was very likely just Jupiter, which happened to be highly visible that night. And honestly, that explains the civilian sightings beautifully. However, it leaves a huge missing link. How do you get a hard radar lock and evasive maneuvers from a planet? You don't. Then there's the equipment malfunction theory. F-4s were definitely known to have some electrical quirks, sure, but that doesn't explain the highly synchronized timing of the failures at exactly 25 nautical miles for 2 completely different jets. Meteors could explain the descending bright lights, but they don't maintain a constant distance from a jet during a high-speed pursuit. And finally, military confusion under stress is a very real phenomenon, but it really struggles to account for the perfectly coordinated radar and visual data recorded that night. So while conventional theories are entirely possible, none of them comfortably explain the whole shebang.
When systems fail. This brings us right to the core tension of the 1976 Tehran incident and why it remains such a benchmark case.
Here is the really frustrating part. We are left suspended because the decisive evidence that could actually resolve the mystery remains completely missing from the public record. We have the official summary reports, yes, but we don't have the raw radar tapes. We don't have the cockpit audio or the Mehrabad Tower recordings. We lack the maintenance logs that could finally prove or disprove a mechanical failure in those F-4s, and we literally never saw the final radiation check results from that dry lake bed. Without this raw telemetry, the case can never be completely closed, but it also can't be completely debunked. So ultimately, the Tehran incident leaves us staring down a truly provocative question about what happens when our most advanced systems of technology and control encounter something they just cannot publicly explain. A bright object appeared, citizens called it in, the military responded with elite fighters, and at the most critical moment, the weapons and sensors simply ceased to function. It entered the archives as a classic, yet the raw data remains locked away. It forces us to ask, when our technological certainty fails, do we search harder for the truth, or do we simply file it away as an unresolved anomaly? Makes you wonder, doesn't it?